Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Awareness Podcast. This episode is entitled Living an Awakened Life, and I am Rona Marren, your guest host of this week's episode, because our dear Susan Telford usually does these interviews for this episode of the monthly podcast. And today, Susan Telford is our presenter for the month of December. And so I've been asked to interview her and get us ready for the 4-week masterclass in December that Susan will be sharing with us. So hello, Susan Telford, and welcome.
Hi, Rona. It's a rather strange experience for me to be on the other side of the microphone today. So thank you for doing this.
Well,
And
thank you for
see
asking.
how it goes.
It's an exciting time for the both of us. And so I'm interested to see what transpires and what rises for us today. So before we get into any conversation, I would love to share Susan's bio with everybody and take it in. Susan is an ordained interfaith minister and the author of An Endless Namaste, Poems of Awakening. In addition to being the brilliant program manager for the Evolve community here at the Center for Awakening, her work for Center for Awakening includes roles as managing Evolve and hosting the Living an Awakened Life segment of the Awareness Podcast. Here we are today. Susan is a spiritual coach and mentor in private practice and the founder of Slowing Down to the Speed of Grace and the 7th Sense Symposium, transformative programs for spiritually awakening women. Susan believes that as we clear away the conditioning, the shoulds and the supposed tos, what emerges is what she calls the 7th sense, that stream of joyful, creative intelligence that is our birthright. And you can learn more about Susan's work at her website, susantelford.com. Susan, that is a delicious description of how I've come to know you. You have your hand in many beautiful programs of spiritual awakening, assisting and guiding many of us. And so where I'd like to start today is for those that don't know you, could you give us a little bit of a taste of what brought you to this journey of awakening?
Yeah. So I have always been interested in spirituality from being a really tiny wee girl. Some of my earliest memories actually are of going to Sunday school or being really, I don't know, just feeling there's more than this, in a really naive, innocent kind of way, just feeling that this is not the whole story, and I dabbled in as a wee girl. I went to the church and the Sunday school, and when I was 16, I became a born again Christian, and I was very fundamental. I was really I was completely in love with Jesus and charismatic Christian organization. And gradually kind of fell away from that. A lot to do actually with the attitude towards women. But this never left me. It never ever left me. And then, there was a point where I was a Buddhist. There's a Tibetan Buddhist monastery very near where I live. And, I was I took formal refuge as a Buddhist and followed the Buddhist path for many years. And then I came to a period of rejecting all of it, of just feeling that, my kind of phrase was, "Oh, Susan, why can't you just be normal? but this kind of longing was in me. It was in me. So anyway, I went and in my 40s, I did a degree in maths and I became a maths teacher. And, you know, I'd had a real longing and a real pull to work with women way back in the 90s. And I did a bit of training as a psychotherapist, but I never finished it. I set up an online business called Stella UK, Be the Star of Your Own Life. Which was good, you know, it's kind of self-explanatory. You know, my pull was always to that kind of, you know, working with women, the spiritual, the creative, all of that. But, you know, I put all that away and got a proper job and became a maths teacher. And in 2016 had a terrible burnout. I mean, awful. You know, a real brick upside the head that put me in bed for 6 months and ultimately led to a spiritual awakening, because I could no longer deny what was most important to me, what was most essential about me. And that was the beginning, really. That was it wasn't the beginning, but it was the, what is it people say, you know, what is it? I can't remember that phrase. It's something about it's maybe not the end. But it's the beginning of the end.
Right.
I don't know. I've misquoted that terribly, but it was. I could no longer. I couldn't go back. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to live in any other way than to be the driven, type A, perfectionist good girl that had landed me in burnout twice in my life. I didn't know how else to be. And that led to a level of desperation and sadness and depression that somehow grace, fierce grace I call it, broke into. And I had the experience, it seems quite trivial, but it was life-changing, of I realised I was being breathed. I was just looking out the window and I just had that realization that I was not even in charge of my next breath. And that kind of started a whole cascade of things where I realized I was not in charge of any of it. And so that real period of questioning and looking at things started. And all sorts of things I'm sure that we'll discuss came from that. So that was a very long answer to your question, but
no, that's a beautiful overview, you know, and it sounds like that point of brokenness was a catalyst for you, for a real jumping off place to a completely different experience. You know, the idea of being breathed, you know, is something that has been mentioned in some of our awakening teachings. What does that mean, to be awakened or to be breathed? What does that mean for you?
So for me, what it's come to mean, and this has been, you know, this is not something that I saw immediately. It's been something that over the 7 years that it's been, has deepened and has become more clear. But the best definition that I can give of being awakened is that I no longer think I'm Susan. And that, you know, that's the most succinct way that I can put it. In that investigation of all of the ways that I'd lived my life, all of the conditioning that I'd been brought up with, that I believed was the way to be. I didn't see any other way to be, even though I'd explored various spiritual paths. It was still Susan doing the spiritual paths. You know, I really want to kind of emphasize that all the, you know, being a Christian, being a Buddhist, it was all this character called Susan trying to improve herself, trying to find peace, trying to find happiness, trying to find something that seemed external, that seemed in the future, that seemed that I could apply my type A driven, good girl, perfectionist personality to. I could be a really good spiritual student, a really good Christian, a really good Buddhist. All of that was just, I called it, that my early spiritual paths were just self-improvement dressed up in Sunday best. Because
Oh, that's
it was the
terrific.
same, it's the same thing, it was the same impulse that led me to get a first class honours degree in maths when I was 47. Because of course I was going to get, of course, I'm a perfectionist, I do things very well. So now the difference is I realise that there is no person called Susan, that was just a fiction. It was made up of all of that conditioning and all of those drives and all of those behaviors that are then reinforced by the world, because you get a lot of praise for that. You get a lot of recognition for being successful. But this was the thing I couldn't do that. I couldn't apply that to, because I just had such a sense of, oh my God, I've read there's no doer. I've read that, I have an intellectual understanding that there's no doer, but actually there's no doer. All these things started to happen that I was not doing. One of the things, you're not going to get a word in sideways here, Rona.
I think you're going right where I was going to go. So, great minds.
One of the things that happened was I was writing in my journal a lot, very angry, morning page journaling type stuff, about how angry I was at how my life had turned out and what was I supposed to do now. And I thought I was supposed to be a teacher. I thought this was my vocation. And out of my pen came not a teacher of mathematics, a teacher of God. And at the time, Centre for Awakening was called the Teachers of God Foundation. But I didn't know that. So I Googled Teachers of God. I Googled Teacher of God, and up popped Teachers of God Foundation. Now, this is very unlike me to do this. I wrote to the Teachers of God Foundation and said, I think I might have to work for you. I think maybe, so things like that happened, which I was not doing. Yes, the body wrote the email, the body came on the Zoom call with Bill Free, but I was not directing that, because inside my head was going, you're insane, actually. This is insanity. You need to really backtrack from this. So the process of living an awakened life for me has been trusting that more and more and more. And again, I started to see that, it wasn't insanity, that other people had similar experiences. And that's been the blessing for me of managing Evolve, has been moderating this community of people on the same path with the same kinds of experiences, knowing that I'm actually not insane. Someone said to me once, you're not insane, Susan, you're waking up.
So beautiful. I just hear that you were led, once that catalyst became in motion and you had some of these seeings about not being Susan, and then stepping back and trusting that, even though I can hear the anxiety behind it, that old voice that says you're supposed to be doing something normal, and just that seeking. Oh, go ahead.
What will people think?
What will people think?
What will people say?
Yeah. Yeah. And then to be led to the community, the Center for Awakening, formerly known as Teachers of God, and to be in that position where you not only exposed to others having the same experience, but a wealth of the teachers that are brought in, for a very wide view of what awakening and awareness and the non-duality teachings are. And so truly blessed, right? If I step back, I will be led, right? Isn't that A Course in Miracles? Really bad paraphrase. Oh, that's wonderful. You seem to really point to including our humanness in this awakening process. You talked about, I am not this Susan, but there is not a rejection of the world in your work, Susan. And so could you describe a little bit about integrating humanness into awakening?
Yeah.
And maybe specifically as a woman,
Yeah.
because you did touch on that working with women, and it is a big part of your private practice. And so maybe you could focus in on that for us a little bit.
Yeah, it's the whole of my private practice because I don't, I exclusively work with women.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that there can be a tendency to stop before the end of the awakening process. And I think that can happen in a number of ways. We can get a taste of awakening. We can have these sudden glimpses that, oh my goodness, things are not how I think they are, or how I've been brought up to believe they are, either, myself, my body, the world, the mind, all of that stuff. And we can read things and we can hear things that say statements such as, the body, I am not my body. The body's not real. The world is an illusion. There's no mind. And these can be misinterpreted. Because I think there's a stage of realizing that, and for a time the previously believed reality of that really loosens, but that's not the end of the path. The end of the path then turns, and with the understanding that you have of your true nature, you come back into the body, into the world. You see that the mind is simply created in the presence of thoughts and sense perceptions and bodily sensations. And so there's almost like it's almost like well, for me, I can only speak from my own experience. For me, it was almost like I really saw that I'm not this, this thing this woman I thought I was, I'm not that. And there was almost like a kind of, oh, well, if I'm not that, what am I? Terror that came up. A kind of, oh, if I keep pursuing this, then what's going to happen? There was quite a lot of fear around that. But as I integrated teachings, and this is another, part of my path that I did the ministerial preparation program with Regina Donacres at Awakening Together. And the reason I did that was because I'd been a Christian and I'd been a Buddhist, and I was interested in the universal truth at the heart of all spiritual traditions. I also had met Regina and was very drawn to her as a teacher and a mentor. And I wanted to see what was clear, what everything was saying and how it all kind of fit together. I didn't, I very much know that all of the traditions are the fingers pointing at the moon, that they are not the truth. None of them are the truth. They're all pointing towards truth. But there was a very much a coming back into the body, into the world, to live from this understanding that I'm not doing any of this. And it just became, it is like a big adventure. It's like I just wake up in the morning and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm speaking now and I don't know what the next words are going to be. That can be a bit, can feel a bit like, it's like being, I always think of that character, the character in the cartoons that jumps off the cliff, and the legs are kind of, for those on the podcast, I'm kind of wiggling my fingers. that kind of thing of being in midair. And actually, what I've come to realize is that being in that midair, as it is the surrender, is the allowing everything to just come through and be as it is. And I'll just finish this little part by saying one of the most transformative courses in that ministerial preparation program for me was a course based on Adyashanti's book, True Meditation. I'd followed Adyashanti when I was a Buddhist. I was very fond of Adyashanti and really respected his teachings, but I'd never actually somehow read that book. I don't know if it wasn't out at that point or I'd never read that book. And I had very Tibetan Buddhist meditation ideas, and they were very type A, be a very good straight back, sit with your until your legs are screaming in pain, and that course somehow brought me back to everything. It includes everything. He spoke in the book about meditating. I was doing it in the summer about meditating on a deck chair and just to be with whatever was, so the birds singing and the heat on my face and I thought I had such a major reaction to that. That's not meditation. What's he talking about? That's not meditation. But that loosened something. And that was part of that giving up the beliefs and starting to live the whatever realization I'd had.
Right. I love how you described using the cartoon, just being in that space and so open to the endless possibilities of what is next. And I think one of the things that occurred for you was a bit of poetry came through, right? As I had mentioned in your bio, you have a #1 best-selling book called An Endless Namaste. And so would you like to talk a little bit about your poetry?
Yes, well, that was something that just started to happen spontaneously, both in writing the morning pages. One of the things that I've done as part of my coaching work is to guide people through the artist's way, because it's a book by Julia Cameron about unblocking creativity, because it was something I had done myself. I just actually was doing something before this podcast on it, and the first time I ever did it was 1997. I've written all the dates that I did it in my book, and interestingly there was a 13-year gap between the year 2000 and the year 2013. That was when I was being normal. That was when I was having a proper job. That was when I went to university. That was. And I was saying in that, to that class that I was speaking to there, ignoring that inner voice can derail you for decades. We can so completely shut off that voice. So as I started to journal, to do the morning pages, to go through the ministerial preparation program, things started to come in kind of poetic form. I would just write really short sentences, and then I would think, oh, that's a bit like a poem, but I didn't really think much of it. And it just kept happening and happening and happening. And then, in the Evolve gatherings, for example, I would say, oh, I'll just share something that I wrote this week. It's kind of a bit poetic. And these were just hidden in Google Docs, in my journals, in my morning pages journals, all over the place. And then I had a really strong sense of publish them. So I went rooting around, for ages to find out how many there were. And I think there were 30, maybe 30. And it turned into this book, An Endless Namaste, Poems of Awakening. And it's in chronological order of my awakening. The very first one is called The Body Knows, because it was my body that stopped me, that basically said, hold on here.
Yes.
We cannot have you keeping on down this wrong path for the rest of this life. So
Yes. Please share with us that first poem, please.
Okay, so it's called The Body Knows. The body knows the lies you tell. The headache blooms where love is blocked. The wrong path knots your stomach with the nausea of self-abandonment, the fear of being seen, your precious life energy exchanged for acceptance. You push on, too busy to notice the birds gliding effortlessly through the sky, the flower buds gently opening, the return of the spring sun. These masters showing the way home. You push down the truth emerging, still trying to be good, forgetting your own innate perfection. There is nowhere to get to, nothing to strive for. Everything is a gift you rejected over and over until now.
Oh, my dear. I mean, it's almost prophetic, isn't it?
Well, it was a message to myself, because
Yeah.
what happened in my journaling was that in response to this crying out, a voice started to emerge that was speaking to me. And the mind said, this is schizophrenia. This is, people who hear two voices in their head are schizophrenic. You'd better retreat to safety, my dear, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But it was such a loving voice. It was telling me, it was guiding me along this path that I started to trust it. I had
Wow.
names for them. I called one voice capital WSS, which was Witness Susan Self, which is not strictly true from what I know now, but I called it Witness Susan Self. And the other one was little lowercase WSS, which was Wee Scared Susan. And they used to dialogue with each other in my journals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, and poetry does something for that. I know that in some of your teachings, you teach a process called Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give us a little taste of what that is, and what that process has brought for you and for countless others, may I say.
Well, in the I am very interested still in Christianity, and particularly in the Christian mystical tradition. And there was a tradition within the Christian monastic tradition of contemplating scripture using a process called Lectio Divina. And I adapted that for contemplating poetry, from poets such as Rumi and Hafiz, and some of my own as well. And there's a poet called Dorothy Walters that I've really enjoyed, and so I've used this process. So basically, what the process is allowing the poem to trigger some kind of response. There's 4 stages of Lectio Divina. One's the Lectio, which is when you read the poem. So you could, if you want to practice it, you could even, and it felt right, you could go back, you could re-listen to me reading that Body Knows poem and use it for that. If you know, for example, that your body is telling you messages that you are otherwise ignoring, you could use that poem and find the words and the phrases that really resonate, and ask within, listen within to whatever comes. And the words of the poetry seems to bypass the mind, because the truth cannot be known by the mind. We cannot understand these spiritual truths, and actually we spend decades trying to often. Trying to learn from different traditions, but we cannot understand it with the mind. And so somehow the process of Lectio Divina bypasses that. It kind of seems to put us into a space, into a kind of liminal space, where we can we can access inner wisdom. So yeah.
Great, great. What I'm feeling drawn to at this point is discussing your idea of the seventh sense,
Yes.
because this seems to be all these pointers, this inner guidance, and everybody knows we've got five senses, and then maybe the sixth sense is a bit of ESP, or that we talk about in the world. But you've really coined a term, the seventh sense, and I'd love for you to share what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a sense, it's exactly as you said. It's like it's almost like the evolution. I mean, I firmly believe this actually, that it's the evolution of the human, that we have all our experience of the world, just in conventional terms, our only experience of the world, when you really think about it, is through our senses and through our thinking and through our bodily sensations. That's our only information about whatever is out there. And that, I spoke earlier about teachings that say the world is an illusion. And to me, what that means is not that there's nothing out there. It means that whatever is out there is not what we think it is, because all we're able to perceive of it is what the senses that belong to the body mind, this what Donald Hoffman calls the virtual headset. That's all we know of the world, from our five senses. And we could call the mind, the thoughts and the bodily sensations, that mental realm, we could call that the sixth sense. So the senses are the fifth sense, and the mental realm is the sixth sense. But I said that you cannot understand the truth of who you are with the mind. And so in order to understand who you truly are and what the hell is going on in this realm, there seems to be the coming online of what I call the seventh sense, which is both the knowing of who you are and the opening of some kind of, I don't know, I was going to use the word channel, but I don't want that to sound as though you're channeling some entity, because that's not at all what I mean. But the opening of some aperture, let's say, which is not even a thing, where this wisdom seems to come online, and it is the same intelligence that spins the planets, that causes acorns to grow on oak trees and not chestnuts, that somehow is orchestrating through its vessels, if we want to use that word, the whole thing. And so the development of that seventh sense is the process of living an awakened life. It is the integration. It's the no longer relying on the five senses and the sixth sense to tell you the truth, because it's so filtered by our own conditioning. You've heard many people, I think it was, I first heard Rupert Spira maybe say, when we put on orange glasses, we will argue black is white that the snow is orange, that the world is orange, that your face is orange, but it's just the orange glasses. So it's living unfiltered,
Yes,
guided by the seventh sense. And that's what my whole life is. More and more, a deepening into that.
yeah, that's beautiful. It sounds to me, what the words that are coming to me are like an inner compass. It's just this pull that we have, and Susan does a brilliant job of helping identify those conditions of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and provides a great opportunity for us to not take ourselves too seriously when we notice those filters and perceptions, because they're there. I mean, we're living seemingly in this world, and Susan has a great way of helping you spot that, and then jump into this creative intelligence. That's what I'm hearing for you, that there's a creative intelligence inside that gets tapped into. And
Always, as someone who has been both a musician, I was a singer and a mathematician, that the music and the maths, they're the arenas where you hear people say things, or you read about great composers saying the concerto arrived in my mind fully formed. Now where's that from? That's via the seventh sense. The mathematician does not solve the problem by scribbling pages of equations. The eureka, Archimedes, to go back as far as that, had his eureka moment as he got into his bath. There's something about the setting aside of what we think we know in order for this to stream through. And it's the source of all great art, great music, great everything. It's a
invention,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, there's an open space. And as you point back to, the mind can never understand these things. There seems to be a one creative intelligence that we can hone in on, and develop that ability to see where I'm being led, and trust that is where one is to
But
go.
I would go even further than that, Rona, and say there is no me that is being led. There is no me who hones in on it. That creative intelligence is just what's living you and breathing you, and often people say to me, "Oh, I don't hear guidance. I don't hear guidance. What am I supposed to do?" The very thing in front of you. Just what's in front of you.
Yes. Yes, because there's only now, right? Right.
Just this has
Yes.
become quite a mantra of mine. Just this.
Yes. See, Susan is an incredibly gentle teacher, the way that she just guides me back to the truth every time. I so appreciate that very much. Well, where I thought we might move into now is to discuss the masterclass that you will be presenting in Evolve for the month of December. We've got 4 master classes, correct?
Yes.
And
That word I have to say. 4 classes. Yeah.
and the title of the series is Stillness, Live from the Silent Heart.
Enter the stillness.
Enter the stillness, live from the silent heart. Yes, yes. And I believe you're going to bring in some teachings from the ancients, and kind of looking at some of that. Would you like to just describe the overview of what you'll be doing?
Yeah. So this has kind of come from 2 things, I suppose. Well, from 3 things maybe. There's another thing kind of coalescing about these classes. So the 3 things that I am most passionate about are the universal truth at the heart of all spiritual traditions. Is there, first of all, is there a universal truth at the heart of all spiritual traditions? Poetry, especially the mystical poets, the poets that have written, from that inspiration that we've just talked about, and also creativity. I think the things, the intersection of creativity and spirituality, that's my little sweet spot. That's where I really light up, how those inform each other, how they're actually, the same thing. So in the classes, we're going to look at silence and stillness in particular as themes that seem to be across all of the major spiritual paths. I mean, obviously I can't speak about every single spiritual path, but you know, the ones that I'm thinking of are the Christian mystics, A Course in Miracles, Sufism, the Kabbalah, the Tao Te Ching, Advaita Vedanta. Though they all, although they've been presented through the particular lens of the culture and the time, they all have the same kind of kernel that is the stillness and silence beyond all things, the background of everything. So we're going to explore that, not in an intellectual, let's learn about it all way, in a direct experiential kind of way. And in order to facilitate that, I'm going to use poetry. And so we will be using Lectio Divina in the contemplation of these poems. And actually, this is the bit that it's just occurred to me as we're speaking, actually. What I would love to lead people to do would be then to actually perhaps write a poem of their own, as a response to each class, just to allow that process to happen. So
that's creative intelligence happening on the scene.
Exactly. So that we each have a taste of that we do actually have. It's not just Mozart and, you know, Dante or whoever, but it's available to each one of us. It is the truest part of us.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's the arena that we'll be playing in December.
Well, that's so terrific. I can't wait. The truth is that Susan has sparked a little creative juices in myself as well. And I've written a couple of poems in the last few weeks. So, I mean, you just soak it in, and it's going to be just a wonderful experience for the entire group. I can't wait.
And one of the classes, I think the final class is on the 23rd of December, which is obviously just 2 days before Christmas. And so in that one, you know, one of the most famous Christmas hymns is Silent Night. And so I want to look at the symbolism of the birth of Jesus and the bringing of the light, and what that actually symbolizes from the point of view of awakening. So.
It sounds wonderful. It sounds like you're going to be bringing in some of the masters that we can take a look at, and filter out this universal truth.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, Susan, what's alive in you right now? Is there anything that we maybe hopped over, or something that you would like to share with us in terms of your journey?
I might read another poem if that's okay with you.
I would love that. Thank you.
I was going to read one called Surrender, which I think kind of, you know, as my journey has gone on, as I said, I've realized more and more that there is no doer. That the more, you know, one of the I always say that, you know, my guidance kind of comes in sometimes in unconventional ways, and one of the most profound pieces of spiritual instruction, I suppose you could say, that I got was get out of the damn way. So this poem's called Surrender. And, you know, for people listening, you can use this too as Lectio Divina. So, you know, in the first stage, as I said, is the reading, and in this case, the listening. So if you're able, as you're listening to this, to close your eyes and to just receive it. Just listen and see what it sparks in you, with the view of doing a little journaling afterwards when you have time. Who is it who has a problem? Surrender that. Resign as the doer. Step back and become like a window. The light of reality will stream through you. Stop pretending to be in charge. Trust that life will move you. Trust in infinite intelligence. Trust the creative power. The personality cannot understand this. Don't even try. Simply agree to surrender. Follow guidance into the problem-free unknown. And that really sums it up, because, you know, if there's no person, there's no problem, because everything is just happening. And if we can become comfortable with living in the unknown, then where is there a problem? I'm just reminded, I just heard Loch Kelly in my head there. Who would you be if there was no problem to solve? You'd be living life from the seventh sense.
Yes, you would.
Peace and joy and creative juiciness.
Deliciousness, openness. Yes. Yes. A
And there's no
beautiful
denial of anything. There's no denial. There's no spiritual bypass. You know, as we said earlier, that we're in these bodies in this world, apparently,
Let's
function.
have some fun.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
have some fun. Let's enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So beautiful. Susan Telford, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to entering the stillness with you for 4 weeks in December. We're going to live from our silent heart for the entire month with the guidance of the beautiful Susan Telford. And I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. And thank everyone who's listening for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rona. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.